So in the span of just a week, the Olympics went from bad to worse on just how woke they've become. I mean, I thought it was bad when they had a drag queen show which appeared to mock the Last Supper. And when they were called out, their apology was, clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group, and that the opening ceremony tried to celebrate community tolerance, continuing to say, we believe this ambition was achieved. That if people had taken any offense, they are really sorry, claiming it was actually based on the painting of Greek god Dionysus and portrait Feast of the Gods. Even though Barbara Butch, who was part of the whole spectacle, initially posted her Insta story calling it the New Gay Testament. Which first of all talk about gaslighting, like clearly there was no intention. Oh, is it that crystal clear that there was no malintention? Should I just know that? And also, I hate those kind of fake apologies of, I'm sorry you feel that way. No, you don't need to apologize for that. What you do need to apologize is for your role in it, especially when you know that it pissed off a lot of people. And also think about the fact that if this were any other religion, they wouldn't have been able to launch this sort of spectacle. A point that was brought up on Piers Morgan.
But this scene involving a parody, a lampooning of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper painting. Clearly that's what it was. They tried to pretend it was to do with some Greek god feast and so on. But the woman in the middle there with the kind of weird spiky halo above her head, who was playing Jesus, actually said on the Instagram, this was clearly, she put it next to the Da Vinci painting. So there was no doubt what they thought they were doing. They were lampooning the Last Supper. Now, I'm a Catholic. There are 2.4 billion Christians in the world. I can only begin to imagine the uproar this had been done to, say, Islam or to Hinduism or to Judaism, to any other religion, frankly. But because it was the Christians, it was like, well, it's a fair game, Gov. I didn't think it was. I thought it was grotesquely and deliberately offensive. What were your thoughts?
Ooh. The half-ass apology that they tried to issue afterwards just goes to the core that this was purposely offensive, because these people that organize these freak shows, they love to ruffle the feathers of Christians because they know that Christians really won't do anything about it. It'll hurt our feelings for a day. There'll be some social media outrage, but then nothing will really come of it. You couldn't make fun of any other religion this way. They wouldn't stand for it. They wouldn't allow it to happen. They would have a much bigger outcry than just a few disgruntled Christians who take offense to it and a few maybe celebrity Christians who have spoken out about it. But they deliberately intended to offend Christians, and they wanted to put on this freak show to just once again thumb their nose at people with more traditional values and say that, hey, no spectacle is left for normal people anymore. You want to watch sports and just enjoy sports? Well, no, we're going to have drag queens and we're going to shove bearded ladies and blue men in your face.
I don't know. The way that Tommy delivered that was kind of funny, not going to lie.
And they achieved it. Congratulations, you've turned off people from sports, one of the only things that gave us some reprieve in this election cycle.
The Olympics are supposed to be this great global unifying event. And here you have them deliberately pissing off 2.5 billion Christians. Why?
Okay, so first of all, I don't agree with you. I think it was about Greeks. Olympics are Greek in origin. That painting, Dionysus, is in France. The other one is in Italy.
Okay, how much mental gymnastics do you have to do to convince yourself that somebody posting the New Gay Testament has nothing to do with Christianity? I mean, come on. This is what being so entrapped in your ideology does. Continue.
She literally put the two pictures next to each other.
Piers, she's a rando actor. She didn't choreograph it. She didn't direct it. So in the right wing in America, they're always saying, oh, freedom of speech, man, freedom, okay? Who cares if you get offended? So I'll offend black people, Muslims, Jews, women, gay people, ha, 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 freedom. And the minute that Christians are offended ever so slightly, they're like, oh my God, we're the victims. We're the most special victims of all time.
Okay, first of all, Cenk is totally misrepresenting, and he really doesn't understand the conservative point, if you can even label that. I think it's really bad to label it a conservative or liberal point, but we often talk about cancel culture and censorship in the cases of politically incorrect jokes, the slightest politically incorrect jokes. Examples would be comedians whose literal job is to be politically incorrect. But we're not advocating for, nor should anybody for that matter, advocate for the mockery of someone's religion, at least not without social repercussions. I don't know why Cenk Uygur doesn't understand that.
Okay, get over yourselves. And by the way, I'm consistent on this. You know, I was born Muslim. But when Muslims say you can't draw the Prophet Muhammad, I say, hey, brother, you can't draw the Prophet Muhammad. That doesn't apply to anyone else. They're not in your religion. So can everybody just stop being offended at everything and move on with your lives? Really, this is so important to you, and you caught feelings over it?
Destiny is somebody who I know very rarely gets offended by anything. What was your view of this?
I mean, like there's two levels to this. So one, if it truly was a parody of the Last Supper, then I guess you can evaluate it as such. And if you want to get offended or you want to be upset about it, I can understand why people would be. But I mean, the idea that this was with like the festivities involving Dionysus and the fact that this is like the Olympics and the Greeks and the fact that like the big thing that everybody's mad about is like the one picture, which is like zoomed in and it's not even what the thing in totality looked like, is just pearl clutching from conservatives. And
Okay, the mental gymnastics once again is so crazy. And also I will say this about Destiny. I used to actually respect him for having the courage and the guts to go on and debate somebody that he disagrees with. But now, ever since his lack of empathy remarks about the man who died in the Trump assassination attempt, I lost all respect. All I see is a Trump-deranged beta male.
All I would say is I'm not a conservative. I am a Christian. I'm a Catholic. And I was pissed off by it. I thought it was deliberately mocking our religion in a way that they just wouldn't have done it with Islam.
Oh, wait,
they wouldn't have done it with Islam.
You were watching. You were
I'll tell you why.
You
I'll
were
tell you
watching
why.
it.
I'll tell you why.
You're like, oh my God, is this the last stop? I'm so upset right now. No shot.
Let me tell you why. I'll tell you why. Let me explain why. There's actually a shocking double standard about this. And it's this. There was a veteran commentator of 40 years of covering the Olympics and athletics, normally in things like water polo, volleyball, all that kind of stuff. There's a guy called Bob Ballard. He's an English guy, and he was fired by Eurosport because he said this in relation to an Australian relay swimming team, female.
Well, the women just finishing off. You know what women are like, hanging around, doing the makeup. Outrageous, Bob. So the men doing that as well. Doing the makeup.
Kind of funny.
Now, Josie, here's the point I would make about this, and this is the double standard I was alluding to. It was a bit of a dumb joke, all right? It's a sort of silly, quite sexist joke about women taking their time to do their makeup. But who cares? It was obviously just a little joke. He's an older guy. He hasn't got the woke memo about no one can laugh at anything anymore. But putting aside that to one point, he gets fired immediately. But the people behind the desecration of the Last Supper in front of billion viewers, offending 2.5 billion Christians, none of them get held accountable.
It's about two different sets of rules for two different types of people. And he said something that was considered sexist against women, which, let me say, as a woman, yes, we take a while to do our makeup, and that's okay. And it's all right to acknowledge that. It's just the truth. And it's nothing sexist about it. But since he offended the wrong people, he had to pay the punishment for offending the wrong people, which was, what is it, losing his job?
Nobody's really offended by what he said. Nobody. And yet I read people on social media calling for his kind of summary execution. This was the most disgusting. And here's what really got my goat too. This was all raging away at exactly the same time that a Dutch male swimmer was trending on X because he's wearing a flesh-coloured swimming trunks, which looked like they reveal a bit too much. And women who were expressing, on the one hand, outrage at this sexism from Bob Ballard were all drooling over this Dutch guy's trunks. It's one rule for them, another for us, Officer Tatum.
100%. I mean, I think that's what frustrates people, because it's like, look, if you listen, I would love to see them do a mockery of Muhammad. I mean, their heads would be laying on the table and they'd be getting thrown off of these buildings that we see in the background, if that was the case.
And something like this has happened before. A notable example is when Charlie Hebdo, a French satirical magazine publication, drew a cartoon that appears to show Muhammad with a bomb in his turban. And later on, Charlie Hebdo was stormed by two armed Islamic militants who opened fire and killed 12 people and injured 11 others. So Officer Tatum is absolutely correct in saying it would have ended very badly for another religion.
They never would mock Muhammad, and I don't think they should mock Christianity. I'll just say this, it's bad for business no matter who you are. If I was on the board and I was looking to do events, I'd say, how about I be as impartial as possible so people can actually enjoy the Olympics, they can enjoy the festivities, and we don't have to offend people in this moment. But they could not help themselves but to shame Christians. And then if a man makes a comment about a woman, it's like it also makes people, here's what I'll say. Black people get so offended about just about anything. It's just like if you make a joke about a black person, You will never in your life see a white comedian really joking about black people. Even if it's a joke, you hardly will ever see it. Black people joke about white people every day of the week. Why can't we all just look at each other as people? If somebody want to tell a joke, tell a freaking joke, laugh at it. If you don't like it, just turn the channel. But now it's such a double standard that when I was a cop, just real quick, when I was a cop, I could say things online, I could do things on patrol that if I were white, I would get fired immediately and called a racist. And that's just not right. And I want to see those things change in America.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy, have we just lost our sense of humor? I mean, I couldn't imagine you getting outraged by somebody making a joke like that to you. You would just probably laugh and whack them back with a zinger of your own, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that kind of stuff doesn't really bother me. That joke about women taking a long time. Guess what? Women do take a long time. So it doesn't bother me in the least. I'm not going to get outraged about it. And to be quite honest, to go back to this Last Supper thing, I didn't like it. It somewhat offended me as a Christian. But all it's going to do for me is I just have no interest in watching the Olympics anymore because it's turned me off now because they've made a point of saying, hey, this is not for you. Kind of the same way that Bud Light made a point with Dylan Mulvaney saying, hey, all you other people,
right,
this really isn't for you anymore. So to go back to what Brandon Tatum said, this is more about a business thing because now I just have no interest in watching the Olympics. I might have otherwise. So just why do it? Why go out of your way to offend a certain people's religion? Bad for business. I'm not going to cry over it, but I just think it's stupid.
I agree. I
think you guys are all way too sensitive.
The funny thing is that you're too sensitive. You're sensitive that we have an opinion.
All right,
that's
Jake,
crazy. If people are upset with it, they
hang on.
Exactly. Brandon and Tommy are absolutely correct. Because if somebody should lose their job over an insensitive comment about women doing their makeup too long, then Brandon and Tommy should absolutely be able to use their platform to express their opinions, their upset over the Last Supper spectacle. And they're not going to call for people to threaten the lives of those who participated in it, not in the least.
But guys, you're pretending like Christians don't run the country. Of course they do. You're pretending like women have historically had the same amount of power that men have had. Of course they haven't. There's a reason why. So for example, I'll use my own background. In Turkey, if the Turks make fun of the Kurds, it's not the same as if the Kurds make fun of the Turks. Why? Because the Turks have all the power and they can crush the minority who are the Kurds. There's a power imbalance there. That's what they're pointing out. Look, I wish we got past all this race and gender stuff, but if you want to talk about who's offended, I mean, you guys say like, oh, yeah, you can never do it about Muslims. Are you crazy? As a guy who's ethnically Muslim, born Muslim, people say that they say the worst possible things about me, including that I should be killed 2,000 times over every single day. And nobody ever does a damn thing about it. Because nobody cares about Muslims in this country.
No, hang on. Brandon, hang on. The thing is, Cenk, you're missing the point. The point is not whether you would find a joke funny or not about Muslims. It's the fact that the Olympic chiefs would never have authorized a skit mocking Islam and the Prophet Muhammad in the way that skit mocked Christianity and Jesus Christ.
So first of all, I don't care about the Olympic Committee, and I don't believe that anybody's going to watch swimming or not watch swimming because they were offended by some sort of skit. If we're talking about which religion actually has power, are we kidding here? There is actually people that have power in this country, and it is definitely not Muslims, it's Christians. And by the way, we're talking about getting offended. As now an atheist, people say that we're going to burn in hell. They say the most offensive things about us, and we don't sweat it. You know why we don't sweat it? Because we know we're right.
Okay, so it's okay to mock Christians because they're a majority religion? Is that what Cenk is trying to tell us? And also, as a Sikh, if a Christian told me that I'm going to go to hell for not believing in Christianity or not following the Bible, they could say that all they want. That is their religion, and they're free to express it. As long as they're not making fun of the turban, for example. Those are two different things.
Conservatives always play this game. And Piers, I think you do it sometimes too, where people will say, well, look at this person in power and what they said. Okay, well, what if we compare that to what these random people on Twitter said? Why the comparisons, right? This guy was a commentator for the Olympics, and whether you agree or disagree with women participating in sports or not, the fact that you would allude to people doing makeup when these are some of the most athletically competitive women in the world doing their competitive events, I could imagine a lot of people would view that in really bad taste. I understand that. And say, well, what about these random people on Twitter making comments? How is this even a comparison? Like, they're not going to be fired from anything because they're not working for anything. They're just random people on Twitter. And then again, this idea of like Christians being so mad that Tommy's over, I'll never watch the Olympics because one still from like an 8-hour opening ceremony offended me as a Christian. And it's like, Are we forgetting that? I mean, forget what Jenks said about people trying to have the 10 Commandments be, in courthouses and whether or not religious education or whatever should be mandated, all this. Forget that. The president of the United States in the last term, Donald Trump, literally ran on banning Muslims from coming to the United States. He wanted to ban Muslims from coming. He had a conversation with Giuliani where he said, how do I ban all Muslim immigration? None of this is even contested.
Destiny,
He went with the seven. He went with the seven. No, I live in the real world. I hope that you conservatives join us one day, please.
Muslims.
He absolutely did.
He's going to ban Muslims from America.
Conversation Muslim ban. There's a reason why
Put
he
some money on it.
He did.
Put some money on it, Destiny.
Go
Put
look
some
it up.
money on it.
Go read it. Go read it.
We can do a
Go look it
bet
up
right now.
Go look it up.
Which in reality at the time, he instituted a travel ban for 90 days from 7 majority Muslim countries in response to the 2015 San Bernardino attack, the mass shooting and attempted bombing by Muslims. And may I add that the 7 countries that were identified were during the Obama administration as countries of concern.
Don't ever believe anything he says. Then why do you guys like him?
Did Obama ban Muslims?
No.
Donald Trump went on the same list for banned countries as Obama. Trump went on the same list as Obama's list. He just
said why did he say it, brother? He said it. He said it because he wants you to hate Muslims.
What Donald Trump said, fact check, okay, by a true patriot. Welcome to this fact check.
I hate how condescending Destiny is. I really do.
Obama had a list of 7 countries that were under heightened scrutiny for surveillance for people that visited the United States. Donald Trump initially wanted to ban all Muslims. That got shot down as an idea. So instead, he took that list of countries. He took the 7 countries that Obama had under heightened scrutiny for immigration or visas, and he decided to ban those 7 countries instead.
He's going to ban all Muslims.
Obama used it for heightened scrutiny for surveillance.
Hang on.
How could
it
Trump
is
ban all
completely.
Muslims?
Hang on. I'm about to say to Officer Tatum, Donald Trump never called for a ban on all Muslims. He actually called for a short-term cessation of allowing people from the 7 countries Obama had identified coming into America after a terror attack while they worked out what was going on.
And that's pretty much exactly how Trump worded it.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Yet you have Cenk in denial.
And if you're going to talk about Barack Obama,
No.
let's come back to my favorite thing. My favorite statistic about Barack Obama is that for all the talk about Trump and deportations
Obama's
and
not
the
running
border
for
and everything
office.
else,
Pierce, let it
the
go.
truth is,
He's not running.
The
He's
truth
not
is
running.
the
He's not
greatest
running for
deporter in
office.
the history of the United States.
And here is Destiny losing his grip once he's realized he's been outgunned. And I just love how entertained Tommy is by it all.
Well, I will end it the way we end most of our conversation, Piers, in talking about the Olympics and the outrage over the Last Supper and the commentator who apparently made fun of women. I really don't care about any of that. If you want to defend women, you want to defend everybody. Let's just keep biological males from competing against women. And I think maybe that'll solve a lot of our problems and level the playing field.
And a great segue indeed. Because while the conversation went off in different directions, it did unintentionally highlight that the Last Supper debacle wasn't the worst of the problems. Because next you have boxers Amani Khalif in the red versus Angela Carini in the blue. And last year, Amani Khalif was disqualified from the Women's Boxing Championship for failing to meet gender eligibility because she had male XY chromosomes. But apparently there was no indication that she is transgender, however suffers from DSD, differences of sex development, where she apparently was born with female genitalia but has elevated levels of testosterone, which was evident in the fact that Angela quit just 40 seconds into getting pummeled, after which Angela refused to shake Amani's hand, falling to her knees crying, later getting emotional because she was doing this for her late father.
Lui è mio padre. Io ho fatto l'ultimo chilometro perché un giorno mi sentii stanca. Dissi babbo, sono stanca, gli allenamenti sono intensi, però io non mollo. Angelina babbo, un campione è un po' come quando combatti, è un po' come il ciclismo. Il campione quando vede l'ultimo chilometro lo sai che cosa fa? Pedala ancora di più. Allora tu arriva a quell'ultimo chilometro e pedala, vai fino in fondo perché io sarò sempre con te. E così ho fatto. Fino alla fine ho combattuto con sangue negli occhi perché volevo a tutti i costi questa vittoria. Solo per me.
And people on X were calling her a weak individual and a P-word, calling her a sore loser and pointing out that Amani is a biological woman. And later Angela issued an apology, saying she feels sorry for Amani, saying she was angry but has nothing against Khalif. And on the contrary, if happened to meet her again, she would give her a hug. In which people said it's too late to apologize, that she's disgusting for putting a target on Amani's back for the world calling her a man, saying go to hell. which I'm not a medical professional, so I can't speak much on DSD, but it doesn't take a medical degree to know that if she failed a gender eligibility test previously, there's no way the two should have been in the ring together in the first place. So screw the International Olympic Committee for letting that happen. And I'm guessing that Angela only made that apology because they forced her to do so. But guys, it gets worse, because we had Steven van de Velde, a Dutch volleyball player convicted of rape, advancing in the tournament. When he was 19, he flew to England to meet a girl he met through social media, and whom he knew was 12 years old. And he did what he did when the girl's mother was out. He was later sentenced to 4 years in jail, but only ended up serving 13 months before being released. And when he was released, he said, "I've been branded as a sex monster, as a pedo. That I am not. Really not." Now what's more, a senior Dutch Olympic Committee official insisted that Steven is not a pedo, saying, "You really think that the Dutch National Olympic Committee would send somebody to Paris who is a real risk? No, he isn't a risk." And British political commentator Emma Wolf was sympathizing with Steven.
So when you juxtapose that with the fact that you've got this Dutch guy who is has an actual conviction for child rape, I'm not going to use the term that you use because I think that's a bit strong, child rape. But when you put them together, it seems so out of whack.
Oh, does it seem out of whack now? Is it too harsh of a word to call him a child rapist? Yeah, screw her. She's an idiot.
She was 12. She was 19.
I know.
She's a child. She's a child.
He was a few years older than her. He's now grown up, and it's really hard when you make a mistake and you are never allowed.
Well, you wouldn't be allowed to work.
To be forgiven. One thing's for sure, this must be a deeply uncomfortable experience for him. He's got his wife spotlight. And 2-year-old. Yeah, I know. I think that was what
he's
turned his life around. He has turned his life around, but it just feels as though he's still a young man. He's 29 years old. He did something appalling at the age of 19.
And the team admit that. The team are not making apologies.
And also 12-year-old, I know, it's really hard to because I know 12-year-olds who are sassy and act like they're 16-year-old girls.
Told him
he did know her age.
She told him he was 16 when he flew over to see her.
I know, I'm 50-50 on this. I assumed that he'd done it as a grown adult, as a grown man, and he'd groomed her. I don't think that's quite the case. I don't know, if I was judged for everything I did between the age of 12 and 19, I'd probably be in prison or something.
Serious rape is different.
I know, of course it is.
The double standards, because he was convicted in a British court.
Yeah.
It's a deeply unpleasant crime for which he was convicted, for which he has served a sentence, but it's whether it's appropriate to serve at the Olympics at a time when the whole outrage was about a, admittedly rather naff, part of the opening ceremony.
They spent 4 days together in this country when she was 12 and he was 19.
Which is a bit different to the way it was portrayed to me, was that he groomed her, flew over to Milton Keynes and raped her, whereas actually it sounds more like an very inappropriate holiday romance thing.
Like, you've got to be kidding me. A holiday romance? No, they met online and he groomed her, simply put. And the fact that they're more concerned about him getting a second chance than the actual victim, that's more appalling. I mean, I know that when you serve your time, you serve your time. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take away the spotlight opportunity from him. And the fact that the International Olympic Committee allowed all of this to happen means they're cucked. Homage to Brett Cooper, my favorite YouTuber.
The actors are cucked, the journalists are cucked, soy boy, beta cuck.
But seriously, they are. That's the nicest way you can put it. And to be frank, we ought to not be nice to people like this, because you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to this channel, hopefully I've earned a subscription. Here's some videos for you to watch in the meantime. Until next time, peace out.